in your work, from your work, there's an adoption process permanently separates a mother from a child. Because I realized that you were a bit sensitive to the mothers who have to give up with their children. Now, so there's the adoption process as it is now.
Yeah.
Does it permanently separate a child or children from their biological mothers?
Yes, and let me take you into a case.
Yeah,
Yes.
Just one case. I've met, of course, many mothers. I've met 36 mothers who relinquished a child. And also
from where? Which countries?
This is India.
India.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also met 16 mothers who were unmarried but did not relinquish a child. Well, just in case one of these 36 mothers who relinquished the child. She entered this short stay home, also an orphanage with a license to place children into inter-country adoption.
Yes.
And she came from a family planning center because she went there for an abortion. She had a boyfriend, she was a teenager, a boyfriend, and she became pregnant, and she came from a poor family. She was living in the slums in South India, and she was living there with her mother, and her mother had a let's say living apart together relationship with another man who was not her husband or not the father of this girl. Let's call her Shakti. It's not her true name, but we give her this name. And Shakti entered this institution, which is run by social workers, and these social workers are very well-educated, professional social workers who have also...
Hello. Good morning, sir. Oh, Mr. Original, bless you, sir. How are you? Go ahead, sir.
But before, I would like to congratulate the lady in the studio for the big, wonderful information you have given us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
I listen.
Amen.
So that later you can come and give us more about all these problems.
Okay.
About this adoption problem. What I want to know is in Holland, do they allow people to adopt? And if they allow people to adopt, what are the regulations? Because before you adopt something, there are some rules and some laws you're supposed
to fulfill or to meet.
Yeah. So if these laws are working, then I don't see, so issues. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
He's speaking on behalf of our group. He said his group. So he's speaking on behalf of his group.
Question, you can keep the headphone on here. The question is, people want to adopt here in Holland, but what are the requirements? What are the terms they're supposed to meet in order to be able to adopt?
The requirements for the adoptive parents, you mean?
Yeah, adoptive parents. Yeah.
Well, that's not so much my specialization, and usually the discussion, if I am invited to talk about the subject, I like to put the emphasis on the biological mothers, and usually the subject shifts towards the children or the adoptive parents. And I'm not a specialist, I don't know exactly what the regulations and the guidelines are for adoptive parents to adopt a child, but I know it's very well organized here in Holland, and they have courses, compulsory courses, and they have assessments by the government, by the Ministry of Justice. So it's quite an intensive process.
Yes.
But I prefer not to go into that subject. I hope I gave enough of answer. I like to return to the biological mothers, because this is the invisible group, and I like to continue, if you don't mind, to bring them
on focus.
To focus on their perspective.
Yeah, I think for the benefit of our listeners, you may not be an expert in the procedures that are required for the adoptive parents to go through, but any piece of information is better than nothing. Yeah. So you mentioned about training courses. Yeah. And what else?
Well,
they get a skeletal outline of.
They get compulsory courses, very intensive, and they get a family assessment to get requirements about their motivation and their intentions.
What about income? Does income play a role?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. What about age?
Yeah, there are some age restrictions.
Approximately, what's the maximum age beyond which you are not allowed to adopt, for example?
Oh, I don't know. This is not my specialty.
Yeah.
I'm more surprised about the age of teenage mothers who are allowed to relinquish a child, which is an irrevocable decision.
Wow.
Let's say in the Netherlands, teenagers are allowed to relinquish a child. I mean, they are not allowed to vote. They are not allowed to buy alcohol.
Yes.
They are not allowed to drive a car. But they are allowed to relinquish a child, which is an irrevocable decision. And we never mention the age of mothers abroad who have relinquished these children. How can we make teenagers make such a decision? Yes.
So you think it's unfair to force teenagers to give up their babies?
Yes.
That's what you feel?
Sorry, I didn't.
You feel it's unfair to force teenagers to relinquish their babies?
I mean, if you are a teenager, 16, 17 years old, your life will change afterwards. How will you look back upon this decision after a couple of years? Nobody can foresee, and nobody can... I think these children need to be protected. Usually they say it's in the interest of the child to get adopted, but sometimes I think in the interest of which child? There are two children involved.
Yeah, a big one and a small one.
Mama.
So your question is in whose interest is it? Is it in the interest of the bigger child or the smaller child?
Oh, baby mama.
Yeah.
But so you
I mean, it's important to recognize that these teenage mothers are in trouble.
They're in trouble.
And they need.
So you believe that they should be allowed to keep their children if they want to?
If they want to, that's another case. Maybe in this stage of life that they are have an unplanned pregnancy, they really are convinced that they should relinquish the child. And sometimes they are sometimes in big panic, and there are family fights about a pregnancy. I mean, that's quite a pressure upon these teenagers.
Yes.
And in this kind of situation, it's not very good to take an irrevocable decision.
Yes.
Who makes it irrevocable? The law makes it irrevocable. I don't think it should be irrevocable.
Adoption is irrevocable.
Really?
Yeah, because the other couple becomes the
legal parents. Okay.
Yeah.
So in effect, the ties between the biological mother and the child is permanently cut off. That's what you're saying.
Legally. And that's also another thing. I mean, adoption is. One Indian man told me, adoption is just a paperwork construction. Yeah. It is not how we experience it. And that was also one of my findings. The parents who relinquished their children, looking back upon it, I also listened to a couple of mothers who relinquished like 20 years ago. They still felt they were the mother. Because from their perspective, and also from the cultural meaning of motherhood in India, and maybe many cultures will recognize, is that motherhood has a very strong meaning, cultural meaning. Absolutely. And they felt they were the only mother. So they could not relinquish the motherhood to other people because a child has only one mother. So they relinquish from their experience, how they live, how their lived experiences are that they relinquish the care for the children. Okay. But legally,
they have relinquished everything.
They have relinquished everything, exactly.
That's serious. My. So, now the question I want to ask you next is, how do these unmarried mothers deal with the effects of giving away their own children? Because you were in India and worked among those young mothers. How do they deal with the effect of having to live without their child for years and maybe permanently?
Let me take you back to this case I was just mentioning, just to give her a face. I interviewed her while she was pregnant. And she was very sure that she wanted to relinquish the child. She thought it was like an extended abortion. She missed the period to do an abortion, but she still did not want to have this child, she thought. So she was very sure that she wanted to relinquish the child. And I listened to her during the interview, and there was no doubt at all in her mind. And then I interviewed her after giving birth, after the delivery. And I can just read you a quote.
Tell us, go ahead.
Wow.
She changed her mind. She had a baby of flesh and blood in her arms, and then she tells me, I think my mother will also change her mind once she sees the child, because my child is very beautiful. I am least worried about my family. If they, the people of the institution, give the child to me, I will take him and stay separately. Eventually, I will bring him up alone by domestic work. For 6 months, I can feed him and keep him with me, and after that, I can leave him with somebody to take care of him and go for work. I can bring him up, but I'm upset for having signed the papers.
Wow.
Everybody here is saying, why would you leave such a beautiful baby? If they allow me to take the child, I will take him. He has 6 toes on his right feet, and it seems that this means that he will be very rich in the future. I have written down his birthday and time to check his horoscope. And then I ask her, who said to you that you should leave the child here behind? And then she answers, all the caregivers who are looking after the babies said so. But what can I do? I have signed the papers that I will relinquish the baby after delivery. If I want the baby, I have to pay a lot of money, they say.
Wow.
So this is just Shakti who changed her mind, and she thinks that she has already signed the surrender document, which was not true. She had signed some papers which was about the rules inside the institution. The surrender deed she didn't sign yet. But in her mind, she thought that she had already signed. So this is also part of counseling. I mean, it should be very clear for this illiterate girl. She never went to school. What it means and which papers have which meaning. And also this idea that she had to pay for her own child. I mean, she is there in this institution for a couple of months, and she is aware of the costs of her delivery. She went to a hospital, her shelter, and she thinks that she has to pay a lot of money. So the child is the price she pays. That's in her lived experience. And she's also, I mean, she's not blind, and she can see that adoptive couples come inside. And she's also aware that these people are paying an amount of money
for her baby.
For her babies, for the babies there. So this is also very much of influence on her decision-making process. And also the social workers, they tell me, like, oh, we never ask money of these mothers if they want to keep the child. We would never do so. But not giving this information makes that they keep on thinking that they have to pay for their own baby. So keeping information is also part of not counseling.
Well, yeah, there are some issues here. Any teenager who becomes pregnant or somebody who is in a situation and cannot keep the pregnancy should be taken through a procedure whereby they are well informed of the choices available to them. I guess here in this country, maybe it's better. I mean, people are not so ignorant about their rights when it comes to adoption. I mean, that's the unwed mother or teenage pregnancy, teenage mother, whatever. They are pretty much aware of the responsibilities and the rights compared with a place like India. So that won't be a big problem here. Do you think so?
Well, I think there are problems here too.
Tell us.
Also here in the Netherlands, sometimes teenagers become pregnant and they are also convinced that adoption would be a very good solution for their problems. But also, these teenagers or adolescents, maybe in their 20s, they come to this decision in a very panicky and restless and troubled period in their lives. And making irrevocable decisions in such a period of life is very dangerous, I think. And also, these girls or young women will become older, and maybe they get married and they get more mature. And how will they look back upon this irrevocable decision? And I think these teenagers and adolescents should be protected from such an irrevocable decision.
At this point, I just feel like I want to invite once again our listeners, if you have had an experience with adoption, maybe someone who has done adoption and in looking back he has some issues or some regrets about this process, we invite you to give us a call. Let's talk about this with the expert here. or if you know somebody who is in a process or situation right now, and they are considering adopting, putting their child up for adoption, whatever the case, I think we would like to bring this into context and to properly know what's going on. I've never encountered this before, but at least I've thought before of adopting, along the line. I would love to still do that, by the way. So it's good to know what's going on, how the whole game is played.
Yeah.
But if you are listening to us right now and you are acquainted with an adoption situation that didn't go so well, or looking back, there are some effects of this whole thing on you or somebody you know, please give us a call on 020-737-1619. So we're talking about the impact upon the mother that's giving up the baby. Okay. Is there any other pain? Is there any other impact that this whole process can have on the mother, the unwed mother,
or the child?
The impact, you mean?
Yes, the effect. Like the girl changed her mind. Shakti.
Yes.
Shakti, she changed her mind.
Yes.
She said, "No, I would like to keep this child."
Yes, but she didn't.
She didn't. Okay.
She left the institution empty-handed.
Oh.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
yeah. And I want to put emphasis also on the role of institutions, because now it appears probably that these institutions are full of very bad people who want to grab money from this intercountry adoption, which is not.
It is not.
No, I mean also people working in these institutions are social workers who really believe that they are helping a mother and a child.
Yeah.
And also here in the Netherlands, I mean, every adoption agency, I'm sure, they are after helping people. And that makes it even more complex, because there are different opinions about what's the best way of helping them. And if a social worker, such a girl as Shakti is staying for a couple of months in an institution, which is run by social workers who are well educated and also thinking middle class norms, which may not match the possibilities for a girl like Shakti, who comes from a family where her father is disappeared and her mother lives with
another person.
I mean, there's a lot of room for maneuver over there, and maybe that's not matching with the ideas of social workers who have more middle class ideas about sexuality and marriage.
Yes.
I was just wondering, is adoption a thing only for the rich and those who have money? Cannot people who are of, let's say, average means, and who have a child wish, who want to have a child but cannot have a child, don't they have the possibility to adopt, even though they may not have 15,000 euros, for example, to pay?
Yeah, that's quite a lot of money, but I don't know about the decision-making processes of the couples who like to adopt. It's a choice. I mean, it's about priorities also. But yeah, in the Netherlands we have also another way of taking care of children, which we call foster care. And this is a way of caring for children and raising children, which doesn't cost any money. It's the other way around. You receive money to take care of the child. But it's not parenthood. The legal parents, the biological mother or an institution, become the legal responsible person or stated legal responsible person. So usually the foster parents take care of the child, but they are not the legal parents. And adoptive parents, they want to have a child.
Yes.
And that's a very important difference.
But you didn't answer my question. And my question is, when there are people who don't have so much money, and they still wish to adopt a child, they wish to have children in their home, do they have the possibility? Because here in Holland we have the low-cost shops. I mean, supermarket. You also have the high-end supermarket. You have things for the rich. You have things also for the have-nots. So
you're asking me, are there any cheap adoption agencies?
Precisely.
Well, once I want to confront you that the subject is already moving towards the adoptive parents again, and that's what always happens with this subject. And I am not sure about this sort of cheap adoption agencies.
Well, if we use cheap, but it's not a nice word. Let's say budget.
Maybe you can check it on the internet. I don't know.
Well, my friends, I hope you're with us and you're enjoying this discussion. We're still waiting for your questions, so give us a call before the time is up. Dr. Pien is here to answer your questions. Okay, now, let me just quickly, let's start on this. I've discovered there are about 3 types of adoption possibilities. There is the open adoption possibility, which allows the child to still have contact with the biological mother, and there's a semi-open adoption whereby the contact is restricted, I believe, and then there's the closed adoption situation whereby the ties between the biological mother and the child is totally cut off. Can you throw some light? Which of these do we have here in Holland? I mean, which is the prevalent type? And tell us, the merits and demerits, if you can.
Yeah, it's about not so much the legal connection, but more the interaction or the emotional or communicative connections between the biological mother and the child.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, in inter-country adoption, it's let me stick to India. It's very hard to keep this open because the policy in the agencies is that the files are very much closed. They protect the privacy of the mother, which also shows how much a taboo it is to relinquish a child. They say it's a social stigma to become an unmarried mother, but it's also a very heavy social stigma to have relinquished the child, because in India and also in the Netherlands, I interviewed mothers who felt quite ashamed of making such a decision. And I also spoke to one mother in the Netherlands who had an open adoption. The child was with the adoptive parents, and twice a year she was able to see the child, and she was very ambivalent about it because it was so painful.
Yeah.
The child did not recognize her, and after that she had to leave the child again. So also an open adoption. It's not my specialism, but I sensed that this was also very complicated and stirring the wound.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's not an easy matter.
No.
It's not an easy matter. You see, there's some parents for reasons of health. I think we have a caller here. Hello, good morning. Original, yes.
He said there are people, there are many there, listen.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So you're saying some people have got to give up their children because maybe they don't have the document for the children, for example, or because of poverty, they are forced to give up their children. Okay, Pien, please go ahead and answer.
Well, poverty is of course a very worldwide heavy problem, and it's not always the reason that people relinquish the child. There are many poor people who don't relinquish their children. And also in India, for instance, poverty was among the social workers in the field, the professionals. They didn't think anymore that poverty was a good reason to separate mothers and children. And poverty, how to solve poverty, I don't have the problem here, the solution here in my hands.
Yeah.
But, well, many women who relinquish children are poor, and maybe more important, they don't have the power to make a well-informed decision.
Now, I'm glad the last questioner raised this matter, because look, you know, if you come from a foreign country and you come to live in Holland, maybe for some reason somebody doesn't have a document to stay illegally, and the person becomes pregnant, has a child. The child must be catered for, the child must be delivered, you know, and then, you know, everything. So, what he's trying to say is that children like that sometimes are made to be adopted in order for them either to have a status or to go through the system normally. So, I'm glad he brought it, because these things probably are happening. I think they're happening in our community as well. So, it boils down to the fact that poverty may be an issue, or the fact that the person doesn't have documentation, document to stay, and so that adoption becomes that becomes the only way out. I believe that's what he's trying to say. What is what do you think about that?
Well, if a mother has no means to raise a child,
yes.
I think she should be helped.
Yes.
But is adoption the adequate intervention?
Now, assuming that somebody is here in this country, hasn't got the status to stay, and the person becomes pregnant, what happens to that child? The mother must deliver. So what's going to happen? Can you just play out that scenario for us?
If the mother has no papers to stay in the Netherlands, there are different reasons. I mean, sometimes people come from other European countries, traveling inside and outside. Yeah. And sometimes refugees are here and they deliver a child. I'm not sure about this legal aspect of it.
Okay.
No, but what I would like to share is that if it's possible to keep mother and child together, or even to take them or to raise the child in a separate setting, but not cut these legal ties.
You mean the biological ties with the mother?
The legal ties with the mother, the parenthood ties.
Yes.
If you extend this period of time for many years, and maybe the child can stay in a foster home, foster care in the meanwhile, but still the mother is the mother, and that's different from adoption.
Well, I think we have not really exhausted this topic fully, because there's still some more issues to come, and the time is up already. Let me use the opportunity to thank you, Dr. Pien Bos, for coming this morning. You've been a great blessing, and we pray and hope that you will come back soon.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.